Well, good afternoon, everybody. I do hope that this video finds you well, and that you are doing good and doing okay this Holy Week. I hope that these videos have been encouraging you, helping you grow in your understanding of this a week of Jesus leading up to the cross and understand the background, what's going on, why he was crucified, and what exactly is happening. So, let's just kind of recap where we've been. So, Palm Sunday, Jesus comes, he's king, he's honored, he's celebrated as he comes into Jerusalem. On Monday, he cleanses the temple and is beginning to get at odds with religious leaders. Yesterday, Jesus was in a disputation with all these religious leaders. He's in arguments. They're trying to find some public accusation that they can make stick against Jesus by trying to trap him in his teaching. They failed to do so. And so now we reach today, Wednesday. Today, Jesus is really not too busy. And this is the calm before the storm for him. However, his enemies are not doing nothing. I guess if you could say it that way, like Jesus is. Um, his enemies are busy, and what are they busy doing? They're busy plotting Jesus's death. You can find this account in many places in the Gospels. Mark 14, 1 through 2 is one of the places that you can find this. So religious leaders get together and they plot Jesus's demise. They find themselves in a quandary. They're trying to figure out how it was that they were going to accuse Jesus publicly. They weren't able to make anything stick. They weren't able to find any accusation publicly in front of everybody that would stick and allow his undoing and unpopularity with the crowd. So they know that the people love Jesus, both for his cleansing the temple, his teachings. So they know that the people love Jesus. However, they also fear their Roman overlords as well. They view Jesus as a threat. They see Jesus as a false Messiah who's going to bring upon the armies of Rome, who are going to rain destruction upon Israel. So they feel like they're in this impossible situation where, on the one hand, they can't get Jesus accused publicly and get rid of him that way. But on the other hand, they feel like if they do nothing with Jesus, they're going to be destroyed by Rome. So they reason that it's better for Jesus to die, and rather soon, than for an entire nation to be destroyed. So they can't accuse or capture Jesus publicly. So what are they going to do? So what they're looking for now is a secret, stealthy way to apprehend and destroy Jesus. Jesus is threatening their earthly security. So now they're trying to figure out what it is they can do to rid themselves of Jesus so that they can feel more secure about their position with Rome. The odd thing is, even though they're plotting and scheming and making these plans, is that they're operating and acting within the will of God all along. Jesus was no victim of the Passion Week, the Passion event, but is in complete accordance with God's will and goes willingly. He has the authority to take up his life and to lay it down, as he would say. So Peter comments a couple months later in Acts 2:23, which I think gives insight into this. He says this Jesus, delivered up according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God, you crucified and killed by the hands of lawless men. See, Peter's touching upon kind of a great mystery that we see. First of all, God is completely sovereign over all things, including the plotting of the religious leaders. God is sovereign over all things. He is not caught by surprise with them making their plans and their plotting and their schemes against Jesus. So that does not catch God by surprise. He is sovereign over all things, including the religious leaders and their scheming. Secondly, the religious leaders are also responsible for their actions. How those true, so they were completely morally, ethically, and responsible before God for what they did to Jesus. So kind of a interesting paradox that we find ourselves in. On the one hand, we have God's complete sovereignty over all things, but then on the other hand, we have human beings bearing moral responsibility for their choices. That quandary, or that paradox, that mystery, is something that theologians have puzzled over throughout church history, and how those two things interplay and work together. In the end, we need to keep in mind that the Bible teaches both. We might have our differences of opinion on how both things are true, but in the end, we need to insist that both things are true, that God is sovereign over all things, including history, including people, even wicked people, but also people are totally responsible for what it is they do. So let's get back to our religious leaders. Jesus is soon going to come face to face with his accusers. And at some point, we too, as followers of Jesus, are going to find ourselves with a religious leader situation like Jesus did, in the sense that we too are going to face opposition and enemies as Jesus did. So how then should we face them? Well, I think we can look at Jesus, and he gives us a example on how it is that we should approach those who oppose us, approach enemies, those who are maybe even seeking to destroy us. So how should we face them? Well, the first thing is boldly. When you look at the life of Jesus and how it is that he's interacting with these religious leaders, he does not back down. He knows that God is in control and that God is for us, and that at any point he could either make things happen or not make things happen. So he is in complete control of the situation because he's God. And we too must realize that God is in control over all things, so we can approach our enemies boldly, knowing that, what, God already knows. We can approach them knowing that God is in control, and realize like they can't do anything to us that God has not permitted. So everything goes through God. So we can approach our enemies and our opposition boldly as Jesus did. The second thing is honestly. And Jesus is very honest about who he is, what he's doing. He doesn't do anything in secret. In fact, in his trial later on, Jesus would say, like, "Come on, guys, you already know what I've taught. I've been teaching and doing all these things publicly. I've been doing nothing in secret. So this whole trying to dig up some dirt or dig up skeletons out of the closet, Jesus is saying, look, you can't do that with me, because everything that I've done has been upfront and transparent and open and honest with all people. So in the same way, we should be honest about our convictions and about our beliefs before our enemies. So we can approach them boldly. We can approach them honestly. There's no need to hide. We should be transparent with what it is that we believe and who it is that we are. But with that, so we can approach them boldly, we approach them honestly, but we also are to approach them wisely. I think this is kind of an interesting kind of thing to touch on here. But Jesus was also very wise in how he approached his enemies. Sometimes he wouldn't be direct. Sometimes he would tell a story. Sometimes he would ask a question. He knew at the right moment in time what to do. Sometimes being direct was not the right the right way to go in a dialogue. Jesus would sometimes be very wise. Sometimes he wouldn't say anything. So when we face our enemies and oppositions, we should realize there are times that a different response is required for different people, different situations, and anything else that's going on. So when we're facing our enemies, approach them boldly, approach them honestly, approach them wisely, and I think of it, and also prayed up. Jesus was praying all the time. Even this week, we will find Jesus in prayer often, because he knows of the opposition that he's going to face and everything that he's going through, and he knows that he needs to be prayed up. So when we are facing opposition, let's keep those things in mind as Jesus did. We face it boldly, honestly, wisely, and prayed up, as we consider what it is to approach our enemies, knowing that God is in control of them, but also knowing that they bear responsibility. So hope this video has encouraged you as we continue to follow the life of Jesus this week.